Today I will be debunking some medical school myths. Number 1, there's no time for fun. That's not necessarily true. There's time for everything. I like to think that God, or the universe if you're atheist, has made enough time in the day for us to do everything we need to do for that given day, including have fun. If you make a good study schedule and you stick to that study schedule, most likely you are going to have enough free time on your hands so that you can do things that you enjoy doing. And you have to make time for those activities. For example, if you really love to exercise, you have to make time for it and put it into your schedule. For example, you could say that my lecture starts at 8 a.m. I wake up at 7 a.m., but I don't have any room in my schedule to exercise. You can make that room. Wake up earlier, wake up at 6, go to the gym for an hour, wash off, and then go to class. Or if you want to play volleyball with your buddies or just hang out and have a nice dinner together, you can make time for that. Just put it into your schedule and plan ahead. And if you stick to your study schedule and make it so that you have enough free time, then you don't really have to worry about not having time for fun. Number 2, medical school is way too stressful and it's way too hard. Part of this can be true. Medical school can be quite stressful, I'll be honest. There's a lot of information that you are required to know, and often in a short amount of time. But again, if you do stick to your schedule and you made a good schedule that works and you study well, sticking to that schedule, then you won't find it to be as stressful. I think many people make medical school out to be much more stressful than it actually is. And then incoming and prospective students have that ingrained in their minds that, medical school is so hard, it's so stressful, I have to sacrifice everything. But my advice is to pull away from that mindset because it's not going to help you. I often find that the students who complain about medical school being too stressful or too hard are the people who have fallen behind or haven't had a proper study schedule to begin with. When you're behind in medical school, it could happen for so many reasons. I'm not judging anyone who's fallen behind. It's happened to me too. It happens to everyone. Things come up in life that you cannot control, but usually when that does happen, people tend to get stressed out. Oh my God, I have to study all this material from today. I have to catch up and study the material from 2 days ago as well and remember that information. And oh my gosh, it's so overwhelming. There are too many resources. Which do I use? Or my study buddy is giving me a hard time. Should I get a different study buddy? Should I study on my own? A lot of things come up. It's not just medical school that's stressful. It's life in general that can be stressful and add to the stress of medical school. But you can manage that stress really well. You can prevent yourself from getting stressed out in medical school, I think, by having that study schedule and sticking to it to the T, to the best of your ability. Obviously things come up, and when things do come up, you don't really have to worry so much about studying because you've already stayed on track for that for the most part, and you can deal with whatever life stressor comes in your way. It's also about having positive outlets like exercising regularly or spending time with your friends regularly and talking about whatever it is that's stressing you out and having a good time with them, whether it's just spending 10 minutes talking to them, having a cup of tea, or going out to a new restaurant. We can't really do much of that because of COVID, but just connecting with other people, talking to counselors, maybe even seeing a psychologist or a therapist if your anxiety and stress levels are too unmanageable or you just want some professional opinions. There's so many different ways of dealing with stress in medical school. Medical school does not have to be stressful. It is up to you to manage that stress and also take measures to prevent yourself from getting stressed out. Number 3, people don't get sleep in medical school. Not necessarily true. I've had at least 8 to 10 hours of sleep per day while in medical school. Of course, there have been some nights where, maybe I've haven't followed my schedule very well, or I just wanted some extra time to study. I may not have gotten as much sleep as I wanted to, but again, if you follow your study schedule and make sure you have enough time for sleep to actually consolidate that information, you will have time for sleep. Number 4, no time to cook. Well, this depends on what exactly it is that you want to cook, your level of skill at cooking. I don't think I've ever had any issues with cooking. I never meal prepped. I know there are a lot of videos out there about medical students prepping their meals. I think that's great that people prep their meals, but I didn't really feel the need to meal prep. I stuck with simple meals like pasta, maybe some soup, um, maybe some tacos, and I never prepped my meals or tried to allocate time to make those meals because those meals were pretty quick and easy to make. So I stuck with those type of meals so I didn't really have to spend too much time cooking. Also, if you do spend some time cooking and you cook in bulk so it'll last you the whole week, for example, you don't really have to worry about that as much. I talked to a lot of different students who do cook their meals on their own, and people for the most part have not had any issues with that. A lot of students see it as cathartic in a way because you're in a way taking a break from studying and just enjoying the cooking process and consuming your meal instead of rushing through it and stressing about it. That's not something that I believe that students should be too concerned about. And there are other options too. If you have the finances for it, you could eat out. Or again, if you don't and you're willing to cook some simple meals here and there that could last you a few days, then hey, it works out. You can cook your own meals, and they can be healthy meals too. And number 5, you need to purchase additional study materials. There are so many different types of study materials for med school. There's the textbooks that you have from your medical school, there's different resources, Boards and Beyond, there's Anki, Pathoma, Firecracker, Complete Anatomy, yada yada yada. At my school, you could still get good grades like A's and B's without using any of these materials and just relying on lecture material. But there's nothing wrong with supplementing your lecture material with your textbooks, for example, or maybe Boards and Beyond, or Pathoma, or even the first aid book. It's not necessary that you have to have these additional materials. At least at my school, it was not like that. If you just study the lecture material really well, then you could get good grades. But if you'd like, you could use those materials. Would it be beneficial for step studying? Perhaps it would. For example, my roommates and I, sometimes there were certain topics that we learned in lecture that we wanted to know more about in even more detail, so we'd crack open the textbook and use it for that, but we didn't go over the entire textbook. Some people enjoyed looking at the textbook and also the lecture material. Others like to watch Boards and Beyond videos and review lecture material at the same time. And I did that, but not for every single topic during my first year of medical school. So if there's something I wanted to know more about or hear someone else explain it in a different way, I would use some Boards and Beyond videos for that. It's not necessary. You don't need to purchase everything because having too many resources can be quite overwhelming, and it's just a lot. It's already a lot that you're learning in lecture alone. So you don't want to bombard yourself with too much information or too many resources. Just stick to the ones that you think could work for you if you feel the need to have those resources. The time that I think you need to have resources outside of your lecture material is if you're studying for step 1, which I did not do during my first year of medical school, and I know a lot of students did not do during their first year at least. So if you're in your first year, don't worry about getting into that too much because you're going to get into it anyway in your late or early second year medical school. And I'll make a separate video about the different resources that you can utilize for step 1 studying. But those are the 5 different myths that I've heard people talk about. So hopefully that puts some of your minds at ease. It's really about you and what you make of the experience. Stress is one of the number 1 things that students talk about in medical school, just having that anxiety, having that stress. And it happens to pretty much everyone, even the most top-notch students experience stress. It's common. We're human beings. We're going to feel stressed out when we have a lot going on. But you can prevent it, and if you can't prevent it, you can at the very least learn to manage it. And the first step in doing that is recognizing that you're stressed, and second, doing something about it. In other words, it's in your hands. Don't get burnt out before your career has even started. I understand that many people, including myself, have gone through life stressors that have added to the stress of medical school. And it can be difficult sometimes to not feel anxious, but there are ways to control anxiety and stress, and it takes time to get it under control, but it's definitely worth trying. So if you'd like some more tips on how to manage anxiety and stress, feel free to let me know. And if you have some tips on how you dealt with stress while in medical school, go ahead and leave a comment below. I'd love to read your advice because this is a common problem that everyone in life goes through, not just medical students, of course. And again, if you are a high school student interested in medicine, a pre-med or medical student, feel free to ask me any questions you have or any advice that you would like in the comment section below, and I'll try to make a video on it. Happy studying!